Lieutenant General Rajesh Pant, who is the chairman of the Cybersecurity Association of India and a former National Cybersecurity Coordinator of the Government of India, is joining us from Indore to discuss the disruption caused by the cyber threats. Thank you, General Pant, for joining. Let me begin by asking you, how serious is the threat of disruption of public institutions, of operations of private organizations that we saw with what happened in the latest of the many attacks that have took place till now on the Japan Airlines?
Thank you, Amritpal, for having me here. And what we have witnessed today is another example of what is termed as gray zone warfare. That means a cyber attack on a critical sector of another nation. And the aviation sector is actually a very prime target. Firstly, it is breaking news. Thousands of passengers are disrupted. There's an economic loss to the airline. There's a reputational loss. And to some extent, it causes an embarrassment to the government at a national level also, because the aviation is a critical sector. And it directly impacts the safety and security of both the domestic as well as the international passengers. And this is the holiday season. You would recall a few days back on Christmas Eve, there was the cyber attack on the American Airlines. They were down for some time. A few months back, the Seattle airport was also down because of a cyber attack. So these are very high impact attacks. And mostly they are carried out at a state-sponsored level. As far as today's attack is concerned, let me just take you through the attack that at 7:25 in the morning, Japan Airlines said on Twitter, or X rather, that its network has been compromised. And a router for easier understanding is something like a post office. So it sends the packet to the destination.
Right.
And if a router is compromised, so you can imagine, the merry hell it can play by mixing up all the packets and causing the system to come down. In fact, it can also create what is called as a distributed denial of service attacks. That means all the packets are sent to one particular system and to make it crash. So finally, at about 4:30 in the evening, again, Japan Airlines has come out with a statement that they've restored the system and there has been no data leakage. But definitely, this is a very, very serious event.
Why do you say it's state-sponsored of more often than not?
You see, Amritpal, cyber attacks are carried out by individuals, by script kiddies, by cybercrime syndicates, all the mafia groups, state-sponsored attacks. Why I say it is more likely to be a state-sponsored attack is because of the resources that are required to conduct such an attack.
Okay.
So there is a term called APT, the Advanced Persistent Threats. That means the type of malware and the weaponization is very advanced. It is persistent because you are sitting there in the system and maintaining persistent, and is a threat. That means at any time you can cause a threat. So since the attribution is difficult, attribution means tracing the attacks is difficult. Normally they come through 2 or 3 hops. That means I hire a server somewhere, let's say in Germany. From there I hire a server in the US, and then from there I come and carry out an attack. So tracing me is difficult. And all this hiring costs, thousands and thousands of dollars. So it cannot be done definitely not at the individual level. The crime is not there, because if it was ransomware, then I would have said, yes, there is money involved, which is why logically I'm assuming that it is a state-sponsored attack.
But then, General Pant, that raises a very, very dangerous spectre. If there are nation states involved with all kind of resources, then how do, say, small private organizations like an airline, JAL may be big, but they can target small airlines. So how do they stand up to that? How do they put in the resources to secure their networks? Then everything is so vulnerable, isn't it?
Exactly, Amritpal, which is why in the government of India, I can share with you, to protect our national cyberspace, we have what we term as a whole of nation approach. And there is a concept called CBDR. That means a common but differentiated responsibility. So the individual has a responsibility, the businesses have a responsibility, the academia has a responsibility, and the government has a larger responsibility. And you're absolutely right. Today, the critical sector, if you take telecom, you take power, you take airlines, it's mostly private. So to protect a private sector from a state-sponsored attack, the government has to step in. So it has to be a whole of nation approach, which is the way we are going about things.
Okay. Because you worked with the government of India, how secure are our systems? That brings in that interest. That how secure are the Indian networks?
I can assure you that in the global cybersecurity index, from 47th place, we have now jumped to the top 10. And recently, Government of India on 27th September has come out with a notification where the allocation of business rules has also been given. And for the critical sector, we have a separate organization called the National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center, NCIIPC, which is totally focused on the 7 sectors that we have identified as critical. So while for incident response, we have a national CERT, which is CERT-in, but for the critical sector, and this is a very unique organization that we have created. Most nations have different sort of structures, but as far as our nation is concerned, I can assure you that the systems are in place. However, vulnerabilities will continue to exist, cyber attacks will continue to take place. What the solution lies in a concept which is called as resilience. So how do you ensure business continuity in the face of cyber attacks is what the whole game is about.
Okay. But sir, do nations, collaborate? Friendly nations collaborate in terms of technology, in terms of, putting more security to protect their critical sectors?
Oh yes, absolutely. So, for example, there is a counter ransomware initiative, which is now grown up to almost 80 nations, and they exchange threat intelligence amongst them. Closer home, in all our minilaterals, whether it is the Quad, whether it is the SCO, whether it is BIMSTEC, BRICS, everywhere now cybersecurity is being discussed. Threat intelligence is a very important aspect, and it has to come globally. So what you're saying is very right. When I said resilience is achieved by 4 aspects. One is education and awareness of people. Second is having the processes in place. Third is using technology like zero trust architecture, etc. And fourthly is the cooperation. So cooperation is a very, very important aspect of resilience.
Okay. So how advanced is intelligence sharing? Because, even in conventional warfare, how prepared you are depends upon what kind of int do you have. So how, I'm giving a sense of how is the tech int sharing goes, how does it go about, and how do countries secure themselves?
So firstly, our national CERT, that is CERT-in, which comes as MIT, it gets input from international threat actors. So whether it is, private players like Palo Alto, Checkpoint, etc., or whether it is the other CERTs, including APAC CERT, etc., they are all part of a network. So first he gets the threat intel from there. Then within the nation, I can share with you that CERT-in has a CISO network. CISO is the Chief Information Security Officer of any organization. Okay. And I've seen that network. He has over 700 CISOs connected to that network. So whatever threat intel he is getting is immediately passed on to these 700 CISOs. And it is passed on in 2 formats. One is called technically the sticks and taxi format, where it is directly ingested into the systems. The other, of course, is by email. So, manually they feed their firewalls, etc. So, and this is now also done sector-wise. So, let's say for the telecom sector, the threat intel is also going through the regulator. For the power sector, the Central Electricity Authority is handling it. Similarly, for each sector, the regulator is also, for the RBI, for the financial sector, the RBI is doing a great job in, coming out with guidelines and ensuring the audits and sharing the threat intel, etc. So internationally level cooperation, national level cooperation, and sector-wise cooperation. That's how the whole framework works.
All right. General Pant, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much. That's all the time we have for, but thank you very much for joining us and lending us your invaluable insights. Thank you.